And I feel like we have such a responsibility to Charlotte to get it right. This can't just be another cookie cutter, copy paste thing from another city that just gets dropped in, cut the ribbon, and we're out. So,
welcome to Talk Tuesday, a webinar series where we explore what it takes to kickstart new projects, launch new products, and create the right conditions for team success. I'm Eric Gorman, founder of Wiley, an agency that helps teams innovate faster with less risk through our sprint workshops and training. We help teams get aligned, eliminate unproductive meetings, and make rapid progress using our interactive, repeatable sprint workshops. Skill up with our training at wearewiley.com. And now to our guest. I am really pleased and excited to introduce our good friend and special guest, Varian Shrum, Community Manager at Camp North End.
hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's delightful to have you.
Yeah.
I feel like our paths cross constantly. Wiley's office is located at Camp North End here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We'll talk all about Camp North End in just a moment. So we're always privileged to be bumping into you and the awesome staff here at Camp North End.
Yeah, I feel like every other day I walk by and it's like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood waving to everyone in their little office.
I know. We're always kind of passing and doing our own thing together, but independently. So it's nice to kind of take some time and actually connect.
After that, we've done something like this.
No, I don't think so.
I'm excited.
So why don't you talk to us a little bit about yourself, Varian, as much as you would like to share, and then just personally, and then take us through a little bit of a journey through your professional career, kind of starting up to the present day, or leading up to the present day.
Sure. Well, let's see. I would say journey begins as it relates to my current job, probably back in college, as I was getting ready for a study abroad summer in Nicaragua. It was a health communications, global communications kind of course. I was a communications major, and so it was combining pre-med and comms students together for one course. And in preparing for that, we were talking about, okay, we're going to influence public health. Well, first, what is public health? And I would say some really early seeds were planted in my mind about what is public health, what influences public health. And one of those things was urban design. The way a city's laid out affects so much of your life, whether you realize it or not. It affects whether you can walk to work or drive to work. And if you're walking past a coffee shop and smelling the roses versus being isolated in a metal bubble for 40 minutes a day, like those are totally different life experiences. And they influence your physical health, mental health, social health, environmental health, for the environment around you, and everything about that just really interested me. Like that's really compelling. Like the way a city is laid out affects your health, and whether you like your life and like where you live. I mean, it seems maybe obvious when you really lay it out there, but I just got excited about that idea. So tuck that away. Years later, I'm living in Charlotte, don't have a job yet, trying to network around, sending my resume into black holes. And to pass the time, I decided to take an online course. So I found one called Designing Cities, all about urban design. And it was just the right thing at the right time because I had just moved here, had all this time, and the course sent me out into my new city with fresh eyes and this whole new vocabulary. And I was really paying attention to my experience. Like as I walked along this street, what am I feeling? What do I like about it? And then same thing, if I'm walking along a street that feels uncomfortable, why does it feel uncomfortable? Oh, it's a long blank concrete wall, like a skinny sidewalk and no people here. So those kinds of things, like that whole course was just formative. And around that same time, just found my way to Center City Partners, which if you live in Charlotte, you probably know, works on business development, economic development, cultural development in the center city of Charlotte. So Uptown, South End, and historic West End. So I found my way there as an intern, age 25, and when I started there, we had just finished the vision plan for the rail trail, what would become a rail trail. So my first order of business, I created social media accounts there and basically started taking the big picture idea out to the business owners and the residents who lived along the rail trail. Like, what wow, you have your dumpsters here currently, but what if it was your front door? Imagine this as like a pedestrian main street. And the first businesses who really got that and opened as if their front door was towards the rail trail, Buddha and Sycamore Brewing. And, now we know those are incredible places. And so I would say I just became so invested in the development of our neighborhood. I won't go into too much more depth, but eventually I won a grant with the Knight Foundation to create a pop-up public space. And it was also inspired by that whole idea of rail trail being like public space for the city.
And I'll interrupt you for a moment to say, like, the rail trail is like a gem in Charlotte. I mean, it's something that you help accelerate and make a thing, an entity. Like, people come, when they come to Charlotte, like, that's one of the top highlights to do. It's something I love and do all the time. It's just basically a greenway that parallels the light rail.
Yeah.
Here in Charlotte, that runs, south and northeast.
That's right. And it started out as like just leftover emergency vehicle access.
Yeah.
Like a little bit of pavement in case a train car ever broke down and a vehicle needed to get in there to fix it. It was reimagined as like what it is today, which is this incredible public commons. You can't call it a park because it's not owned by Mecklenburg County, public commons, but really just public space. And that whole idea of what public space can do for a community, the catalyst, it can be like a place where people gather and connect and run into people who aren't, exactly like them. It just spans, it strengthens the social fabric of the city.
I think there's like a counter there on a prominent place in South Bend, along the rail trail. I can't remember the exact numbers, but I'm sure it probably gets hundreds of thousands of visitors, if not more.
Oh my God.
Year. It's just a lovely.
Yeah. So funny you mentioned that. When we were initially doing public counting users on the rail trail, at the time, this was 2015. Excuse me, I was aware there were 2,000 people a day passing by this one particular spot, and they had nowhere to sit down or relax. So I applied for this grant with the Knight Foundation, wanted to create a pop-up public space, and we created the neighborhood living room, which was just this incredible community project where we turned this little parking lot that faced the rail trail right in front of an art gallery. We turned it into a living room and put furniture, kids' art activations, live music for 4 days in October 2015. And 1,000 people came out. And honestly, it was such a watershed moment in my life because it was more than just, oh, we put on a great event. It was really the capacity that was built all along the way, like the relationships that people formed with each other, the way they felt connected to their city, like they had agency, everyone who was involved, and then so many people who just participated, like showed up to enjoy the space. There's so many great stories that people tell me, like, I met my business partner just sitting there, and like, just another example of why public space is so important to a city. So that was an incredible experience. It opened so many doors for me, and then ultimately led me to get a LinkedIn message from someone named David Hemmerdinger in December 2016. And he said, I'm a developer from New York trying to do this big project in Charlotte called Camp North End, looking for a young community person to jumpstart. Would you be interested? So I came out here to meet him December 2016. It's like a post-apocalyptic kind of vibe, but
for a place back then.
As we were walking around, I was just like, my wheels were turning. I could see like what it could become. I already knew what I wanted to do. I could imagine things happening in certain spaces. I knew who I wanted to call. And it just felt like, neighborhood living room times 1,000. So here we are.
That's amazing. Yeah. It's funny, like, so several threads. I mean, I think we're going to need to pull back on that thread of those relationships. I think that'll resurface, I suspect, in the context, especially of your current work. Also, I don't know I think we might have talked about this, but I can't remember if you remember that my graduate degree was in urban regional planning. So you're speaking the same language and came at it very similarly. And so, yeah, it's kind of cool, kind of common background that we have, thing in common. So we've started talking about Camp North End. Give us a little bit about like your current role and what that entails. I often ask the question like, okay, what's a typical day? I know full well there is probably no such thing to some degree, but maybe at least like walk us through like the different types of things you do in any given day.
Sure. So my role as community manager, I like to say my job is to make the house a home.
A little bit.
Like these are buildings, but the people who occupy them are what make this place. And the strength of connections between them, I think, is what will ultimately make Camp North End a success or not, you know? So.
And let me, and you know, it's hard to describe this place, but maybe start there with like, and you started to see like the vision when you first came here and it was very raw. But like for those that are never been here or don't have context, give us a little bit about what this place is, and then maybe talk about your role that way. I think it'll make a little more sense perhaps once I have some context for what this campus is.
So 1 mile north of Uptown Charlotte, 76 acres of historic buildings dating back to 1924, Model T factory. And then elsewhere in the history, the U.S. Army was here in World War II, using these buildings for a quartermaster depot. So there's a lot of incredible American history, Charlotte history right here that's been hiding in plain sight for the better part of a century. And we at Co Properties are renovating these buildings to write the next chapter of that history. So creating beautiful office space, artist studios, restaurants, shops, public spaces, over 76 acres. It's going to take 20 years. So we started in 2017, renovating the first batch of buildings, including this one that we're sitting in, to set the tone for what the place could be, and activating it with events. So Friday night music, festivals on the weekends, and just things that got people coming out here for the first time, and to hopefully they catch the vision for what the long-term thing can be. But the long-term thing is essentially like a signature destination for the city of Charlotte. If you live here and you want to show off your city to your family or friends coming to visit you, like we hope we'll be in that conversation. If you could only take them 3 places to show off what is the best Charlotte culture.
It's definitely on my short list. Family, friends, fun.
Me too. And I work here. So I spend my weekends here. I choose to be here in my free time. But yeah, so the goal is an adaptive reuse, mixed use project where soon you'll be able to live here, but currently you can work here, relax here, do a run club here, enjoy art, and all the things. Yeah. So that's the high level.
Yeah. And it's just, 20-year vision, right? But for the build out, but basically since the start, just in the however many years that is, what 5 to 6, maybe 7 years?
We are 7.5 years.
Okay. So yeah, time flies. But in that time frame, if you were to come here, which I did, I've held events here, our Design Sprint boot camp, we've held multiple times here. It was a different place. And yet each week, month, year like that passes, it's just incredible to see it kind of continue to grow and transform. So now talk to us a little bit about like the role. So now we have a little bit of context for what the place is. And yeah, just incredible things happen here, like special events that happen no other place in Charlotte. They happen here. So anyway, can't say enough. I obviously chose my second home here. So I'm preaching to the choir, I know, and it's definitely a soft spot for it. But talk to us about like the role that you play in activating this place and kind of bringing that vision to life.
So my role, as I said, make the house a home. Yep. But even before that, attracting people to come visit and create an emotional connection, like facilitate some kind of memory that they make here that hopefully is a positive one, and they remember this place fondly and they want to come back. They want to tell their friends about it. So I've spearheaded all the events, marketing, community relationships, like reaching out to groups outside of Camp North End, inviting them in. And then once they're here, stewarding the little community that we're building. So that looks like family meetings or just making little connections, connecting dots across the camp fam, as we call it. Sending out a weekly newsletter, I guess, kind of an internal newsletter, just highlighting what's going on and shouting people out. Just remembering what's going on in people's lives, like someone just got married, someone had a baby, things like that. And ultimately just being like a connector, a professional connector, we'll call it, like form a connection with each person individually and then help them to feel that they're part of something bigger than themselves.
I mean, I think, the scope and scale of what this place is and trying to do, it really does require a lot of trust, a lot of relationships, nurturing those relationships, be very intentional about that. Communities in Charlotte and many places across the country and world, they've experienced what it's like when a big developer or a government entity, someone comes in and just uproots, their lives. I mean, here in Charlotte, we have the history of Brooklyn and all the ramifications of that African-American community and devastation that's happened to that community through urban renewal, quote unquote. And so there's a healthy skepticism. Like, talk to us about like the way you've been so intentional, the Camp North has been intentional about building trust and relationships that enable something like this to even exist, let alone be successful.
Yeah, great question. I would say that was the theme of year one. Still is a theme, but like that was the guiding principle of establishing this place. Because I was also coming from a place. So I mentioned I was working on the rail trail in South End, which has undergone so much change in the last, I've been here 11 years, but even in that time, I used to live in South End and it was like, what it is then versus now is night and day. So some of those changes positive and some you felt the sting of a developer coming in from another city, just raising an entire block of all your favorite neighborhood hangout spots to drop this soulless building, that I had in my, own limited way, I had felt that here in Charlotte. So I felt like the conversation in Charlotte was kind of reaching a fever pitch of, we have no character, we have no identity, we have no history, we tear down everything old. And like, what is Charlotte? And so I was really aware, I like felt all those things myself and was just tapped into that conversation. So when we started here, I think before I even accepted the job, I was like, wow, I see the potential for what this could be if we get it right. And I feel like we have such a responsibility to Charlotte to get it right. This can't just be another cookie cutter, copy paste thing from another city that just gets dropped in, cut the ribbon, and we're out. So to me, it would only be a success if people felt a personal connection to it, felt they were represented in it. And so as one person, you can't do all of that. So I set to work pretty immediately, like, let me just connect with as many people who are already in this area as possible. Got to meet all the community leaders, our elected officials, like the service organizations that are in this neighborhood, like just tried to get the lay of the land around here before we really started doing our own thing. Understand like what context there already is here and who is invested in influencing all of that. So I would say building those relationships, having those conversations right from the start helped lay groundwork for as we and build trust to begin the bigger work of activating this place. And the strategy was always, I as one person can't host 1,000 events, but I could find people who have their specific followings and be intentional about which groups we invite in. And over time, the mix of things that are happening here, the character and quality of people who are spearheading each of those things, I think it'll start to speak for itself. So we made a lot of very conscious choices about that early on, both in events, but also who we ultimately lease to. When you only have 10 spaces that you can put a permanent business, the mix of who's in there says a lot about what you value. So we tried to be very intentional about that. Like, this is a business that was just down the street, Black owned. They're here invested in this neighborhood. This is an artist studio. This is a maker studio, and they each come from different pockets of Charlotte, but together they represent the city. So I think that set the tone for the bigger thing. And like Camp North End really is greater than the sum of its parts, but those parts, each one is so crucial. So we really, curate. People have to pass a high bar before we lease them a space. It's like, are they a great person? Are they committed to their craft? Are they community minded? Like, do they want to be part of something bigger versus just in their role?
Mm-hmm.
Close the door and we'll never see them again. So early on that was, and to this day, but early on especially.
I think the things you're touching on are so important from from the micro to the macro, right? Like something mega. I mean, building relationships, being intentional about who you partner with and who you bring into your sphere. I mean, I think there's so many things that you're doing, because essentially, like, this is the scale of a neighborhood, right? Or even a small town. It's massive. And like, there's, I think the things that we tend to undervalue or maybe underappreciate, whether you're building a business, launching a new product, is like those interconnections with people and those underpinnings, the kind of the soft stuff that everyone wants to talk about, the technology or, something that's sexy and cool or AI or whatever. But ultimately, in our line of business, especially, like, everything boils down to people. So the biggest challenges in the world to me are people problems. You're trying to get people to stop doing one thing and try to do something else. And so, like, having that trust, being in touch with who you bring in and how you're nurturing those relationships, I think that's so incredibly widely applicable, and especially just magnified when you're talking about the scale of this type of effort.
Yeah. To a word you just used that reminded me of something, micro and macro. We like to say micro is macro.
I love that.
Period.
Yeah.
The way you do, how you do anything is as important as what you do. Which was a neighborhood living room kind of takeaway for me. But here, at scale, micro is macro. Every small decision we make adds up to something or sets us 1 degree on a trajectory, which over time can have wildly different end points. So making those micro decisions with as much integrity and consistency as possible over time can really differentiate what you're building.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's social capital, and that's just as important as actual, like, monetary capital, right? So, I will give Damon, I know him pretty well over the years, and a lot of credit for being intentional about building relationships, not just being transactional. So I think he's walking the walk, which is...
Yeah. It also helps that we are here for a long time, 20 years. When you're developing something and your goal is to flip it in 18 months to get the highest return possible, that leads you to one set of decisions that you are going to make. When you are holding something for 20 years and building it a little bit at a time from the ground up, it's a totally different approach, because we are in year 8. You've been here since the beginning. Like, I see you every day. I see these people every day. It's not just a lease. You know what I mean?
Right.
We're building a community. So, and we're here for a long time. So that gives us just more, I think that puts more responsibility on, again, inviting in the right people, stewarding those relationships, versus this is just a quick in and out kind of typical developer thing.
I know that, especially in the early days, startup mode, I suspect you guys still very much embrace a startup mentality of constantly testing and learning and adapting. Talk to us about like, how do you cultivate that? And then how do you do that in the context of like working with a team? Because in our line of work, I find that some people, they will come around to it, but not everyone is like, and I would count myself in that category. It's like, you pop out of the womb and you know to prototype and test. You have it, test and learn quick, fail fast. Like that's very not in our normal human nature to do that. Like, are you looking for certain qualities in people, but then also what are you doing to intentionally create those conditions and cultivate that mindset of test and learn?
Yeah. Well, back in the early days when we had a much smaller team, I would say everybody was a generalist. And I read Blitzscaling, Reid Hoffman, LinkedIn's journey from, one person to 1,000 people, 10,000 people. And in the early days, it's like you're pirates. And by the end, you're the Navy, and just like all the transitions and who are the right people at the right stages in each part of that life cycle. Early on, when it's the pirates, like 5 of us against the world, everybody's a generalist and just like has this go-getter attitude. No fear, big appetite for risk. Everybody does everything. I would say early on, that was very true of our small but mighty team, who are all still part of the project. And over time, as we've matured, our processes have gotten more efficient. The project has grown, the team has grown, everything has gotten better, more complex, but also just more efficient. We've added in more specialized people who were like, before it was me doing all marketing, all events, all community relationships. Now I have a support staff person for each of those things who is more specialized in each of those things. I still oversee it all, but I rely on them to like, event logistics better than I do. So I empower you to take it on. Social media in 2024 better than I do in 2024. I was the right person in 2015, but you're the right person in 2024. So you take it on. I'm here to like give you, direct and give air cover and support. But I would say one thing everyone has in common is just something that you can't teach, which is this inherent curiosity. Like, why is something the way that it is? And then the sort of inherent drive to go figure it out. Like, just that innate curiosity and like motivation to go find answers to questions that you just wonder about. That's something that you cannot teach, and something everybody has in common on our team. Because at camp, there's no manual.
Yeah.
There's not really like there are precedents for things, but we're kind of, I hate to say it, making it up as we go. Like, you look at other examples, but this is unique to this context. And so we're kind of learning. We are learning as we go. And so having some innate curiosity and like being someone who's going to notice something and go figure it out, absolutely crucial, no matter the stage of the project.
So I think, if I can like don't on you just a little bit, I would say that you are incredibly positive. You are tenacious, like figure out how to get it, and you're committed to like the end goal, knowing that the how to get there is often fluid and dynamic, and you're constantly adapting because all the things are being thrown at you, especially in those earlier days. Like, how do you feel that? And just the last couple of minutes we have, how do you kind of keep that alive and fueled? I know also you've got a little one at home that's a new addition, a couple years old, which I'm sure drains the battery a little bit faster perhaps than before.
In some ways, and also fills it. Ways. So it's all balanced out. Yeah.
Talk to us just briefly about like how do you stay positive, especially in the face of big challenges, naysayers, and just lots of stakeholders with competing interests? And that's a big one that
No, this is a great one, because this is what keeps me up at night. So in a good way. It's like this is the thing that my subconscious mind is always working on, which I think is a sign that this is the right project for me. You know, it is work, but in some ways it doesn't feel like work if you're kind of always thinking about it, always working on it, even when you're, you know, on your family vacation and something just sparked something in your mind. So how do I stay positive? Well, I guess I just am, but also I believe in what we're doing and I believe it's worth doing. So these past few years, pandemic, really intense political climate, it's so heavy. And I think it would be real easy to be defeated. And in some ways it's like, what's the point of doing anything good? You know, not to be like dark about it, but it's like, what is the point? I went to a conference and there was a session called Community Building when it feels like the world is ending. So I went to that one. The takeaway from that was it might feel like the world is ending, but we have to remember the world has always been ending. And in every individual person's life, at some point they go through like a personal apocalypse, like a personal world ending. Their world is turned upside down by loss of a loved one or a diagnosis or, you know, a layoff they didn't see coming. Every single day, people walking among us are experiencing their world being turned upside down. That's true of all human history and present tense. So how much more do you need a space where people can find peace, feel welcome, be rejuvenated, like just be reminded of good? I think that is what really drives me, like wanting to create something that people can come to for, I don't want to say healing, but like rest and relaxation and fun, and to be reminded of what is good.
That healing's appropriate too.
Yeah, just like we need those spaces where you can come be with other people, find connection. Like really what keeps us going in life is relationships, is connection to places, to each other. I feel like that's where, when it really comes down to it, that's where we find meaning and motivation and just like love and acceptance. So on a micro scale, I want to foster those kinds of moments for people. And at a macro scale, like be the place where you can come to feel that. So yeah, that drives me.
Well, on that very positive note, I think this is a great place to end. Thank you so much for taking time. I'm going to walk away with lots of things, one of which the micro is the macro. I love that. Yes, thank you so much. You're a delightful human being, and it's a treat to be able to know you and get to see you and interact with you here at Camp Northland. And I think we'll have to continue the conversation because there's lots more to discuss in the future, part 2 for sure. Well, thank you so much, Varian.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
I'm Jake Knapp, and I'm the creator of the Design Sprint process. I'm the author of this book, Sprints, and I am here at the Wiley offices in Charlotte, North Carolina. This right here, if you were thinking about maybe doing a design sprint with Wiley, this is where you would be, at this table, probably, unless you do it at your office, which is totally an option, but right here in this space with a whiteboard, with a bunch of paper and pens. Basically, they're going to help you think through the problem, get it started, and get a solution tested really rapidly. That's the whole idea with a design sprint. I'd highly recommend, if you're thinking about it, that you do give Wiley a chance to your project. I've worked with these folks a couple times, and they always exceed my expectations. I always do things a little bit better than I could have imagined ahead of time. They're also really nice. So don't tell them I told you that. I try to, keep it cool, but they're super nice people. Anyway, best of luck to you, and try Sprint.